Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this morning at 9:30-ish. So we'll talk about the Gaia-X digital clearing houses. Um, who in the room knows what is a Gaia-X digital clearing house? Or guys from OVH, obviously. Okay, so everyone knows. So I'm Evan. Christophe is somewhere trying to close the door. I'm a technical lead at Gaia-X, working on the Gaia-X lab. And Christophe, who's just here, is the Chief Technology Officer of Gaia-X since a few months now already. And okay, so let's start from the beginning. What is a Gaia-X digital clearing house? You will see often at Gaia-X this acronym GXDCH. It's just a matter of being a bit shorter because Gaia-X Digital Clearing House, come on, it's super long, it's super marketingly maybe, but on a day-to-day basis, it's cumbersome to use. So the GXDCH, they represent the operationalization of the Gaia-X Trust Framework. Basically, we have software running, we have specifications. Do we really want the association to be the centralized entity to get compliance? I'm not sure. And that's the model that was chosen by the association. It's to rely on partners to deploy the components, host the components, and be trusted by the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I have an economic comment to make. This is, of course, could be the basis, the initial part, not the full, but an initial part of a business model for what Hubert and guys from Université Paris Dauphine call the technical orchestrator. Unfortunately, there is a session in parallel where Hubert Tardieu is explaining that concept that you in ecosystems have kind of business orchestrators and also technical orchestrators who do that, all this validation, verification, the stuff where the businesses normally do not want to know how the technology underneath works, but someone has to do it, yeah. And this is, of course, the only idea how that can work in decentralized federated ecosystem is if the clearing houses or the orchestrators also work in such a fashion. So that's the idea. So it's consistent.
And please don't be sad for missing this presentation. There will be replays in let's say a couple weeks, the time we get back to Brussels and de-rush everything, but all the presentations will be available on YouTube very soon. So you will be able to see Hubert Tardieu in the replay. No worries.
Yeah, I know.
So I just repeat again the why GXDCH, Gaia-X Digital Clearing House. So these hosters, these trusted hosters, they are our providers. And at the moment, right now, we have 8 clearing houses that are running. So you can see that they are pretty much from everywhere in Europe. IRA Networks in Spain, Arcis in Spain, Aruba in Italy, Delta Deo in Germany, Nusta Aerospace in Germany, OVH Cloud in France, Proximus in Belgium, and T-Systems in Germany. We also have other clearing houses in the process of getting accredited. So this list will grow over the time.
It will also, there is an idea also already implemented on the test, in a test environment in Japan. So we have entity data is doing a clearinghouse in Japan. So this is not limited to Europe. It started, of course, like the ASPL and Gaia-X in Europe, but it's transcending that. So you would need to think of it as a worldwide federation of clearinghouses.
Yeah, exactly. The trust framework is built so that you can add your national, local trust anchors. For Japan, they will have this national registry of company. They will have an ADAS equivalent, and they will totally be able to use the Gaia-X components in Japan, and they already deployed them. So how to become a clearinghouse? The easiest way is to have a bit of knowledge of Gaia-X, obviously. If you know what are the components, how to use them, it's far more easy to deploy a clearinghouse and be able to say, okay, I'm ready for production. You need to get in touch with Przemek Halub, who is responsible for the contractual part. He will make you sign a contract. We have SLA, SLOs, meaning that you have to respect the minimum availability of the components, obviously. You deploy the components using the Helm charts that we provide or not. That's up to you. If you want to make your life complicated, you are free to do it, obviously. And when the contract is signed, the lab team validates your instance, and tada, you're a GXDCH. That's it.
I have one organizational remark to that. You could actually, it's a question for you. How long could it take? Not the average. How long could it take from the first steps to the validation? What do you think? What is the lengthiest? I will not name the thing. How much
days,
time would you
weeks,
spend?
months, years?
What?
On the second line.
No, the second line is us. No, the Chemic is available 24 hours.
But yeah,
No, the reason is why I ask is that the difficulties, it was 1.5 years. The difficulties is not in that part, in the deploy the components. I think the record is 3 hours, 4 hours, half a day or something like that is typical. The more difficult part is to get your own organization, which is part of the story before you can sign the contract. And the larger the organization, the more you need to talk to other guys who have the money. This is what about the liability and all that stuff. So that please reserve more time for that than for the actual implementation. And I guarantee you that the technical guys will have ample of time to look into the clearinghouse the videos of the academy and explore that because the typical for large organizations, the organizational part is harder to accomplish fast. The smaller the organization, the easier it gets because of the structure of the company. But if you're a large organization, you want to take that into account in your planning, that the organizational part is also necessary. Otherwise, of course, no one would trust you, also on a legal basis. But that will take much more time normally for large organizations, for complex organizations than the technical stuff.
yeah, and I think the record is like 4 days from contact to running clearinghouse on production.
Yeah. That's for the very small and compact organizations, you can do that.
Yep. So what to deploy when you want to be a clearinghouse? Since a few weeks now, you have 2 versions to run. The point is that the Loire release was a complete breaking change. We changed APIs, we changed the backend, we changed pretty much everything, and we want to maintain Tagus until Danube is out. So you will have to run 2 versions, knowing that the V1 is on maintenance only, so only a few security fixes will be deployed normally. So Tagus is composed of 3 components: the registry, the notary, and the compliance. And Loire is also the registry, the notary, and the compliance. And on top, we add the credentials events service. The installation instructions are available on GitLab. You have all these QR codes that are leading you to every page. Yeah, please go ahead.
Question: if you want to set up Setner clearinghouse, Setner like proof of concept to figure it out,
Mhm.
matches your part of the software because we're building EcoFed. Does it then always also need to install Tagus and Loire, or could you just install Loire from now on?
If you want for test purposes locally, you can totally just deploy Loire. It's no problem. It's just that if you want to have your own clearinghouse because you don't want to depend on test systems, Proximus, Aruba, or VHCloud, you can totally. But the goal is that you don't have to deploy a clearinghouse to start testing. They are providing the service free of charge. At least the basic service is free of charge. They can add services on top that they can charge you for, but using a clearinghouse is free of charge. So you can totally just rely on the existing clearinghouses. And it's not mentioned, but the lab team is also providing an instance for each version. We have development versions, we have main like off production version too. So you can totally not deploy components at all if you want. But if you want, you can totally deploy just Loire on your computer using some Minikube or whatever, and you can test locally, totally. So the installation instructions, everything is in a README, so quite long to read, but not that much in the end. Take every component, Helm install, and yeah, that's it. You have a few variables to complete, some certificate to get, and that's it, you are running. We also provide in the same repository the C4 model architecture diagram. Why C4? It's just because it's quite convenient. You start from a global picture and you go very deep down into technical details. So that's issued from the C4 model website. As you can see, you start with a very global company view of what is your ecosystem, and then you zoom in into the components, then what is inside the component, and then you can even go to the code level to explain what is the architecture at the software level. We've done the exercise for Gaia-X. So as you can see, you have the company that is a bit outside of the ecosystem, or at least not part of the components of the ecosystem, and you will have this list of external dependencies. And in between, you have the compliance engine, the registry, the notary, the credentials event service, and the wizard that is just an optional component that we provided for Tagus. As you can see, the notary relies on some external APIs, the Glyph API, the European Commission VAT API, and the ORI API. The registry, which is the source of truth, relies on Mozilla's certificate list and on the ADAS trust service providers list from the European Commission. This is the case for Tagus. For Loire, the diagram is just a little bit different, as this list of external dependencies is handled differently. We are now using IPFS. We are using a service that is pushing this list without having the registry connecting directly to Mozilla or to the Commission to retrieve the list. And it also allows us to manipulate the list of trusted anchors, to add manually certificates, to add the association, the Gaia-X association as a trusted anchor as per the compliance document. So you saw the global picture, and now we'll go deep down into the components. So we have this notary. The notary issues credentials that are legal registration numbers using either the VAT API from the Commission, the ORI API from the Commission too, I think, the Glyph, so the lay code, if you know them. And for the V2, for Loire, we also have the Open Corporate that was implemented by T-Systems. So if you have an API key for Open Corporate, the feature flag will be showing that the tax ID is supported, and you can use local national tax IDs to identify companies. So yeah, it's quite amazing. And the aim of the notary is to prove that you have a legal person that exists. And yeah, as you can see, this is the next level in the C4 representation. You will have the controllers, the services, their dependencies, and it's pretty self-explanatory if you are a bit tech or architect on the architect side. As usual, everything is open source, everything is available on GitLab. This architecture is available in the GXDCH repository on GitLab, next to our architecture decision records, next to the documentation on how to deploy a clearinghouse. The registry, as I said, the Gaia-X source of truth, it validates that your certificate is trusted, so that basically it was issued by a trust anchor. It provides the shackle shapes for JSON LD validation. It provides the context, the schemas. It provides also the ontology, so that you can reuse it. If you want to extend the ontology with LinkML, you can totally use the Gaia-X ontology and just extend it. I think that Vincent will mention it, will mention it just after, perfect. We also have the ability to exclude malicious participants, and the registry is in charge of checking the revoked issuers list and tell you that you were banned from the ecosystem for not being nice. You sign the terms and conditions that says that you will be nice. If you are not, well, we will exclude you. And given that getting an ADAS certificate on EVSHL certificate has a cost, maybe you will think twice before claiming that you are Boeing or Airbus, and when you are not Airbus. And finally, the registry provides the list of accredited clearinghouse, meaning that you can trust credentials that are coming from these clearinghouses. As usual, the architecture diagram. As you can see, for Loire, pretty much everything relies on a volume that is mounted on the container. Everything is retrieved from IPFS, put on a volume, and the component is just serving the files mostly. And a few controllers here and there to check certificates, but it's pretty straightforward. Well, I mentioned it already. The major change is that in Loire we use IPFS for the storage of the files. Before we had files locally in the source code. We had files that we were getting from GitLab. Not that great in terms of a single point of failure, so we changed that. And yeah, we now rely on IPFS, so interplanetary file system, to have a bit more redundancy. Finally, the compliance engine. Basically, that's the go-to point if you want to state that you are Gaia-X compliant, Gaia-X compatible, Gaia-X, whatever the word you want to put and say that, and claim and brag that you are working with Gaia-X. That's the compliance engine. We verify the format and the content of what you will provide. We will verify the signature of your credentials. Using the registry, we will verify that the signature the certificate you used, was trusted. We will do the shackle validation of your JSON LD. If you are familiar with XML, it's the equivalent of using XSD to check the format of an XML. We will validate that your legal registration number is issued by an accredited notary, so basically a notary hosted by a clearinghouse. And we'll also have a few business validation. For example, in Tagus, we check that you have an issuer and that you have signed terms and conditions. And in Loire, we went way further as we are implementing all the criteria that are in the compliance document. You have dozens of filters checking every criteria. These are done using some OpenCipher queries. Basically, JSON LD can be represented as a graph, so you can navigate the graph using OpenCipher queries. So that's what we've done. We could have gone for SparkQL to navigate RDF graph. It's just that the community is way smaller. Getting support is much more harder than with OpenCipher, so we went for OpenCipher. So the diagram, I noticed yesterday when finishing my slides that we did not update the compliance diagram for Loire. So feel free to see this diagram for Tagus. As you can see, there is not that many services and that many code running in the end. Yeah, it was pretty small. Now that we know what are the components, how to deploy them, how to become a clearinghouse and have a nice logo on the Gaia-X website. Well, easy. Each component has an Helm chart. Here I am in the registry and we have the Helm chart. Pretty straightforward. If you are using Argo CD, for example, to deploy your components, Argo CD will be able to recognize that there is an Helm chart in this repository, and in 3 clicks, 3 copy-paste, you have deployed the component. If you do it manually using the Helm client, you need to prepare the command line, but still quite easy for an ops or someone from the SRE side. And if you want to do it manually using Docker Compose or whatever, you can do it totally. It's just that we don't provide the chart for that or the files for that. As I mentioned, we have a few variables to fill for the chart to work, for the component to work. For example, in the registry, we need a key, a certificate, because the component in Loire is exposing its own configuration so that people can trust what they are using, meaning that we will check that you did not alter the revoked issuers list, that you did not alter the source of truth, to try, obviously, to gain more trust and make the ecosystem confident in what exists. So yeah, every component has this README with a deployment section where you have all the variables. Normally, everything is now up to date. We took a bit of time after working on Loire to update everything. If you, as usual, and it works for everything, the charts, the READMEs, the source code. If you see something, if you have a question, feel free to open an issue, go on Slack, send an email. The whole Gaia-X digital clearinghouse ecosystem and the components, everything is open source. So we are working and waiting for contributions and for feedback to improve, obviously. And if you need more help to deploy, if you feel like it's still fuzzy after today, we have the Gaia-X Academy. We have already an existing course on the Academy to help you deploy the components. Significant to not say a huge overall rewriting of the course will be published a few days after the summit, teaching you how to deploy a cluster, how to deploy the components on the cluster, and then deploy the GXDCH components using Argo CD on the cluster. So a step-by-step tutorial on how to do. So this comes just after the summit. Each component has its own documentation for V1 and for the latest. We have an amazing community on Slack. I really invite you to join the Slack channels and see how you can be helped and how you can help the community. Unfortunately, Kain Meinke, our OSS community lead, is not available and was not able to join. But we are very proud of the community we have. We have an OSS call every Thursday at 9 with 50, 60 participants each week. And the emulsion here is incredible. So yeah, really invite you to join the Slack instance. The Gaia-X Academy, we have 6 courses now with the Loire compared to Tagus course. We have 6 courses that are available even if you are not a member. If you are a member, we have 11 courses available. You have technical content, you have business content, you also have the certification, meaning that you are able to put on your LinkedIn profile that you have knowledge about Gaia-X. So yeah, go ahead and take a look at the Academy if you haven't already. And yeah, it's time for your questions, if you have any. Yeah, I know it's still early morning. But
there is one restriction which some actually I've encountered once. You need to be, as an organization, you need to be a Gaia-X member, an official one, in order to become a clearinghouse. That would be part of how you contribute also to the ecosystem, of course, as being a member, because there's of course a membership fee associated and all that.
Okay, then.
Maybe one.
Yeah, sure, please.
Are there other organizational requirements to become a clearinghouse, besides being a member? Shall I repeat it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Are there other organizational requirements to become a clearinghouse?
There are a few ones.
Being a member.
There are a few ones, and we have a document on the website explaining what are the requirements and what you need to do to become a clearinghouse.
What I remember from the early days, that so at some point there also was a requirement that you needed to be a cloud provider or something.
Yeah, but it's no longer the case. As you can see, we have Neustar Aerospace, which is totally not a cloud provider, as the name says. So yeah, there is no requirement of being a cloud provider.
No particular part of type of organization.
No, not at all.
Okay.
So yeah, and honestly, you don't have to become a clearinghouse to use Gaia-X. It's just if you want to rely on your own services, if you trust more your IT team than other people's IT team, you can deploy, but you can also just rely on the community and make the ecosystem grow without creating trouble for yourself.
Yeah, thanks.
Because I won't lie, it's a bit of work. You have to deploy, you have to follow up a bit, because when there are fixes, you need to follow up and deploy the fixes. It's not that often, but you need to stay up to date just to not create, a distanciation between some instances and others. So yeah.
What Evan said is very important in a decentralized setting, that everyone can run, for instance, the compliance engine. If you don't trust your clearinghouse in your ecosystems, or if you offer a service which needs to in real time verify that everything is according to the standards, then of course you would run your own registry node, you would run your own compliance service in order to check that in real time, and that's possible. I think Delta DAO has been doing that even before they became a clearinghouse. So checking on every service, if you're a service provider, and very critically, but not a clearinghouse, you would use the the compliance service for checking every service request, whether that is really a participant according to the rules of your ecosystems. That is, of course, a sovereign decision. If you're a very small company offering some services and you trust your cloud provider and your clearinghouse, then you won't do that. But it's your choice. It's like with any distributed ledger technology. If you are completely paranoid, you want to run your nodes on your own systems. If you have a different risk level and exposure level and attack surface, then you would rely on others. But the components wouldn't change, maybe the deployment a little bit if you're not officially a clearinghouse. But depends only on your level of paranoia. Or attack surface or risk.
Rebouncing on the organizational question, we added recently in a discussion with the Gaia-X digital clearinghouse providers this notion of that will be nice if you were able to verify that the clearinghouse provider is who they claim to be. And so since a week now, maybe 10 days, when we have a credential provided by the clearinghouse, we are able to show you the clearinghouse is compliant itself with Gaia-X. So here, for example, Delta DAO, they describe themselves and they were verified by the Neostar Aerospace clearinghouse. And as you can see, test systems, they provided the credential and they were validated by Proximus. So we are waiting for the other clearinghouse's credential, but it's also a work in progress. And if you deploy your clearinghouse, we will ask you to provide us your identity. So yeah, I'm expecting to see this page grow and to see more green checkboxes on this page.
Any more questions? Remarks, critique, which is of course called feedback. Okay.
Okay, well, I guess it was quite dense for an early morning session. Well, I'm worried to tell you that the next session won't be much easier. So feel free to grab a small coffee before the next session and see you in half an hour, I think. It's at 10:30.
Yeah.
So
It's about ontology, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's very philosophical. Ontology is the philosophy of being. So we are discussing space, time, and what exists, and how do you put that into the registry.
So thank you very much and enjoy this last day of the Gaia-X Summit 24.
Thanks a
you.
lot.